I personally believe the biggest challenge in our community is jobs, getting our young people to work. A lot of times our young children, they're getting tied up in gangs, they're getting tied up with people they should not be tied up with. And if we start with our youth, try to find jobs for them, try to revitalize downtown, get the businesses downtown, open again. As you know, when Macon Mall left back in the late 60s, downtown Macon died. We've got to rebuild downtown. We've got to get every one of the stores open. But we've also got to get those individuals that want jobs, get them jobs. We've got to find a way to work with the school systems to also help get children. All of them are not going to go to college. They've got to learn a trade. We used to have a school called Dudley Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Bishop.
I think jobs and economic development is really necessary to grow the tax base and to keep taxes low. We have a team with the Ombudsman that's here, Pat Toppin, and during that time we brought in over 4,000 jobs and close to $618 million in economic development in new and expanding businesses. We had Bass Pro, we had Nietzsche Ha, we had Cold Distribution Center, the new mall was built. We really did a lot. Now we've got to clean up the crime problem. We've got to make it more attractive. We've got to put the team back together that sold Macon and Bibb County. I can do that. Put me back in office. We'll keep your taxes low.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Cusino.
Education and jobs is the most priority thing on the list here in Bibb County right now. By education, I would participate in the board and be on there or have a representative of the council to be on the board or be at the board meetings themselves. Also have the schools to have after-school programs and to have the churches to participate in getting people out to have higher education after services. I'd also try to get jobs here in Macon, which is by trying to clean up our city, and the biggest cleanup project would be of cleaning up our riverfront and cleaning the river itself out, which would include our Army Corps of Engineers, which would bring a lot of jobs towards this city. Thank you.
Mr. Ellis.
Good morning. Thanks for the Chamber for hosting this. In my opinion, the number one problem in our city is poverty. We have entirely too much poverty in our town. According to the 2010 census, 48% of our children under the age of 18 are living in poverty. Of course, poverty is tied to jobs. So, and education is tied to jobs, it's also tied to poverty. So the three of them you cannot separate them. And they're critically important that we have to work day and night to eliminate poverty in this community, to get jobs for people who deserve jobs, who are trained, and we must train people starting early on in the school system to ensure that when they finish high school, they are prepared to go on to post-education, post-secondary education, or prepared for the workforce. That way we will be able to eliminate the poverty in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Hart.
Good morning. I think jobs, education, crime are three of the things that are very important in our area and very much challenging to us. What we have to do is look for new ways to partner with those people responsible for education. We also must make sure, Ken, that with crime, we work on both ends, being proactive, but also working to see and make sure that those kids who fall through the crack because of our high dropout rate, that we do something with them. And thirdly, with jobs, we must make sure we continue to provide the appropriate incentives to make this an attractive place to come to.
Mr. Ricker.
I would agree. Economic development is by far the greatest challenge for us. We have a number of assets that we need to take advantage of and be competitive with other cities across the Southeast, across the nation, and indeed around the world to attract new jobs, new industry to come to our community. By being able to offer jobs, you solve a lot of the problems that have been mentioned, poverty and crime. The best answer to a lot of that is the availability of a high-quality, high-paying job. So we need to be competitive. And how are we going to be competitive with other communities? Number one, you have to be politically stable, and you have to be financially stable. Business and industries are not going to come to your community unless you are politically stable and financially stable. This goes directly to the answer that I previously gave about being financially stable and also politically stable. I am a huge advocate of consolidation, and I think it will help make us politically stable, and I also think that it offers the opportunity to be economically stable. How are you going to work these two governments together, and specifically how are you going to reduce the cost? Because 70% of the cost of local government is salaries and benefits. And you reduce that, I think, by trying to take advantage of attrition. And as people retire, you consider not replacing them. The legislature has indicated their desire that everybody that wants to have a job and wants to work should have a job and a place in the government. And we're going to try to do that, but you use attrition over time to try to reduce the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. Mr. Hart.
Okay, I think part of what you look at in terms of trying to become a more efficient government is to make sure, again, that as through attrition, you don't replace those people who again, leave those jobs. But in addition to that, what you do is you make sure that you bring people together. Remember, in this particular government, for the very first time, you'll be dealing with constitutional officers. So what you put together has to be a partnership. It has to be a thing that you work out with your team. So what you're going to need in place is somebody who can bring consensus, who can work with people, who can put together a plan that will look at us going forward in terms of how will we produce efficiency, what we do in every department when, again, a person leaves, but also what you do in terms of looking at how you spend your resources.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Ellis.
Well, of course, one of the first things you have to do is assess where we are with the services that we need. And I think you do what major industries do all the time when they combine operations. You try and put together a good incentive package to incentivize people to retire, those who can retire, give them a very good package. Beyond that, you try to grow the economy so that you can afford the people that you have, especially if they are needed to provide the services that people desire, not only desire, but they've come to expect and they need. So we want to grow the economy, looking at the overall, and be a human resource major, and having worked in human resources, I understand the personnel aspect of this, and we want to make sure that we don't do a massive layoff. By the same token, through attrition and giving people incentive to retire, I think will go a long way.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Cusino.
If you have two positions that are the same, you look at the position and who's doing the most in their position, who's doing the job correctly. From that point, you act as a true businessman. If that person is not doing their job, it's just like on a regular job on the outside. They either have to be terminated, resign, or retire. And we have a lot of nutrition that's up at the very top level that can go into retirement right now. That's where I'd be looking at, is for the retirement of a lot of the upper and allow the position not to be filled, so that way the nutrition of the bottom can work its way up to the top again, instead of trying to hire and not fire. In other words, bring them up, allow them to retire. That's why I would resolve.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bishop.
The first thing we need to do is we need to do a 5-year financial plan. And in that plan, and tailor our spending around that plan. It's going to be necessary, and we're way behind the 8 ball now by not doing that already. Right now, the city and the county government should have gotten together and projected cost of combining law enforcement. Public safety is very important to this community. We've got to have public safety. If you looked in the bill, there's a caveat in there, and they put it in there because there's a lot of hidden cost in there, and we need to be transparent. They know what the cost is going to be. We need to give it out to the public and let the public see what the cost is, and let them. And then we need to tailor our spending around whatever plan projections the 5-year budget gives to us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen.
When elected mayor, the first thing I will do is I will get together with the community leaders as well as the RC We have a lot of duplication of services within the departments of the city and the county, as I have been an employee of the city and also as a county commissioner and vice chairman of this board. I will get together, we will look at the resumes of those individuals, find the most qualified individuals for the job of the consolidated government. We would offer some type of incentive package prior to the beginning of the new year, so when we go into the new year of the consolidated government, we will know where we stand, and we will have one finance person, one human resource person, and we will work it from there all the way down. There's no possible way I can tell you I can reduce crime. That is up to the sheriff. The sheriff cannot actually not reduce crime. He can serve you, he cannot protect you because you don't have that many police officers. We've got to get to the community. There's a lot of black on black crime in this community. We've got to get to the people. We've got to find a way to get those individuals to start working with the children. A lot of these kids, they don't want to get involved in the crimes. They want to make money. The best way to make money is work with education, find a job, as I said earlier, start a technical school where they can make money for themselves and let themselves feel good about themselves.
Mr. Bishop.
As I've said before, at budget time, we should make public safety a priority. Crime affects economic development. It affects a lot of other, it affects the industry coming in here. It causes taxes to increase. So what I would do is, there are some things we can do also, though, besides support the sheriff. It's our duty to fund them. It's our duty to give them the opportunity to maintain and train and keep a good workforce. We don't want bottom of the barrel. We've got to put an incentive package together for public safety that'll make us have the top law enforcement unit in the southeast. We also can work with the state to bring in, we used to have a crime lab here. We used to have other state facilities here that's closed down. We need to work with them. We need to bring the state patrol post into
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
to help the sheriff. And it's really not enough.
Mr. Casino.
With a law enforcement agency, I would have more of the foot patrol, more of community awareness. I would allow them to talk with the sheriff, to work with him, to get programs out there for the children like they have right now, to get more involved into the school systems, to have more citizens on patrol, to have more community awareness. And when you have the community awareness, you have what? Eyes and ears of what's going on in the community. When you have the sheriffs out there and they're walking the path, talking to the people on the streets, talking to the people in their homes, what do you have? Again, community awareness. The thugs, who's ever out there, when they see the sheriff that are out there patrolling the streets and actually getting out of the cars and talking to the people, they're going to be evading from that neighborhood. They're going to be walking away from that.
Thank you, Mr. Casino. Mr. Ellis.
Well, obviously, things you have to do, but let me respond to something that was said, that put a black face on crime, that yes, we do have an inordinate amount of crime in the African American community, but we also have an inordinate amount of poverty in the African American community. I think what you can do, you can put an overlay of any map in this town and see where crime is committed and see where poverty is rampant, and they will go hand in hand. So let's not paint this with a black face. Having said that, what we must do is do early intervention and prevention by after-school programs and things of that nature, supporting families where we can to ensure that they have the services that we can have after-school programs, as we did when I was in office before, by getting grants out of Washington, by programming different funds to make sure we have a very active and very proactive recreation department.
Mr. Hart.
I think we have to make sure that the sheriff's office has all the resources, training, and that it needs. And we also have to be proactive, like the Juvenile Justice Center. I think what we have to do in those particular instances is make sure that we deal with the fastest growing group of people going into our criminal system, and that's juveniles. What we're doing with the Juvenile Justice Center is we're creating a campus-like atmosphere so that we can bring teams together to intervene very quickly to get them back in productive situations as quickly as we can. So we have to be proactive there. We have to make sure again that we also look and see if we can't do something about those people who dropped out of school. We got a significant number because of a high dropout rate who dropped out of school. So we got to go back and get with those and make sure we provide training and other activities for them so that we can get them in productive situations.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Ricker?
We need a balanced three-part approach, one of intervention first, prevention second, and rehabilitation third. By prevention, yes, you have your neighborhood watch programs, you try to prevent crime, you have your youth programs where you try to steer young people away from gangs and drugs and violence. But then you need your intervention, that's your active police enforcement. And you do need to support the sheriff and give him all of the assets and resources that he needs. But finally, you need rehabilitation. When those people that have demonstrated that they have no concern for the rights of others, of personal safety and property rights, then prosecution, incarceration, and rehabilitation is a necessary ingredient. Every time we arrest somebody, we're surprised that it is their 28th arrest since 1995. That needs to stop.
Mr. Ricker?
I would continue the regional approach that we have taken over the past several years. We are increasingly aware of the fact that we have to work together collaboratively as a region. Clean air, clean water, regional employment centers like Robbins Air Force Base are all projects that we need to work on, because clean air doesn't care where the county line is, clean water doesn't care where the city line is, and regional employment centers. So I would work with the Middle Georgia Clean Air Coalition. I would work with other regional agencies and the Middle Georgia RC to try to provide some of the things that can reduce the threat to Robbins Air Force Base. I think is primarily what we need to do. We need to pay attention to the BRAC Commission, the stealth BRAC.
Thank you, Mr. Ricker.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
I will continue to support the 21st Century Group. I will continue to be involved in the regional approach as well, to make sure I led, if you remember, the whole issue of getting $8 million from Bibb County, $8 million from Houston County, and $500,000 from Peach County, to make sure we dealt with the encroachment area. So I will continue to try to promote regionalism, to make sure again that we approach these things as a broad community rather than as a single community. I would also look and see if we couldn't do something about education. That was one of the infrastructure when we went to the Pentagon, that they told us that part of what you have to do, in spite of all these other things you're doing, is you got to make sure you emphasize an improvement in your education system. Because again, when people move to this place and bring new missions, they want to make sure again that the education system will support the children who come in.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Ellis?
Well, as a military retiree, the user of Robbins Air Force Base quite often, of course, I understand some of the intricacies out there. We have to do everything we can to support the missions there. But what we have to do is, I visited Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and talked to the Commanding General of the Material Command. One thing that he discussed, that if we're going to compete with Hill Air Force Base and Tinker Air Force Base, which are the two sister bases to Robbins Air Force Base, we've got to make sure that we have a high quality of life in this community and always have a good education system, that we're producing the kind of people that we need to produce for this vast military industrial complex called Robbins Air Force Base. So we will work with those at Robbins, work with the leaders in Warner Robbins, work with the 21st Century Partnership and others to ensure that we are doing our part, what we can do, to ensure that not only Robbins will be safe from BRAC now, but in the foreseeable future. And I commit myself to that.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Cusino?
Again, education is one of the biggest things, but when we're talking about a base possibly foreclosing or closing down, we need to look for ways to use that base by having domestic flights being able to fly in and out of it, as different airports within our United States areas and across the world, they use the military bases to fly in and out of. That would increase the temptation of the people staying there. That would also keep the stability of the workers that are there. It may not increase the actual Air Force Base itself, but it has the potential to keep that base as a base and flights coming in and out of it. And again, the education is most important. To work with people on the base so that we can get higher education here
Mr. Bishop.
As I did when I was chairman of the county commission, we'll continue to work with the 21st Century Partnership. Also, the Clean Air Coalition, which I was a charter member of, we went to Washington and secured some money while we were on that Clean Air Coalition for the green cars that they have now at the county. And we also looked at getting some assistance with designating the clean air area. We have Houston County get in compliance, and we're in compliance. But we need to keep a watch on that because it's easy to get out, and the type factories we bring here and everything else will have an impact on that. We also need to look at, I don't have enough time to answer all that question because there's a lot involved in it, but I can tell you that I worked hard to acquire the property for the.
Thank you.
Not.
Everybody is equally deprived of time.
But if you
Mr.
ask a
Allen.
complex question, it's hard to answer.
Since the late 1930s, early 40s, when Bibb County actually purchased the property for Robbins Air Force Base, we have a major concern for that base. We have a lot of jobs come out of Macon. We have a lot of businesses that work at that Warner Robbins Air Force Base. Over the past 15 years, Bibb County has worked extremely hard through all the commissioners, through the city council, through the mayor's office, through the region, to try to keep Robbins the best that it can be. As mayor, I would do everything humanly possible to be working regionally with all the mayors, all the commissioners, all the councilmen, all the Warner Robbins, all the generals, everyone that we have to work with to make sure that base stays solvent. There again, as I stated earlier, once elected as mayor, the first thing I would do is surround myself around people of this community that have the knowledge of certain sources of things that we need to do. Then I would get with the newly elected board prior to going into office, and we will work out a plan whether to outsource certain parts of our government or keeping it in-house. I personally think we should outsource as much as possible. Give those individuals better chances with their jobs, better opportunities, and I've worked on that as long as I've been a commissioner.
Mr. Bishop.
I again say we need to do a 5-year financial plan, and we need to tailor our spending around that. That involves looking at those areas you're talking about and not having enough time to be specific. I can say that the 5-year financial plan, we would do a study and we would determine which places, which departments we need to outsource, where our savings were. If it was cheaper to do it in-house, we would do it that way. If it wasn't, we would outsource it. But it's strictly a business decision. This is a big business, and we're going to run it like a business on that, like we did before.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Crusoe.
As you said, it's ran like a business. Who's doing the most efficient job? Is our government currently doing the efficient job, doing it in-house, or is it the outside that's doing a better job? You evaluate each one of the things that are going on, whether it's picking up the trash, whether it's the sanitation of the sewer systems, whether it's the sidewalks, fixing of the sidewalks, whether it's doing of the streets, whatever it is. You evaluate it, who's doing the best work and getting the most for the money. That's where I would start. The best one will get the job. The worst one, just as a businessman, what happens? They have to leave or find another way to get the money to come in and revenues to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Cusino. Mr. Ellis.
We definitely want to use sound business practices, but I would say to the people in public works who are currently picking up solid waste that you'll have to compete. You'll have to compete with the private sector, just as Robbins Air Force Base and maintenance. They have to compete with Boeing. They have to compete with other people who are repairing airplanes. If they cannot do it cheaper, then of course we have no choice but to go with those who can save us money. But by the same token, we cannot just say that we're going to go to the private company and put all of our employees in harm's way, if you will, because if the private sector will take an employee and not give them the same benefits, will not pay them a decent wage, a livable wage, then of course we have a responsibility, we have a moral responsibility to ensure if we're going to hand employees off to a civilian or a private contractor, that those employees are treated in a very, very fair manner.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
And that's what we will make sure that happens before we outsource
Mr.
any
Hart.
services.
Okay, the first thing we do, I think we take the first year and evaluate the services, and we'll look at it, looking at business practices to make sure again that what we're doing is efficient and effective. So we'll look at it in terms of cost, but we'll look at it beyond just cost. We'll look at it in terms of services given to the community. So I think as you look at giving these services, you want to make sure that what you do is get the best bang for the taxpayer. So in doing that, you want to evaluate whether or not the services that's being provided by the city of county can be competitive with what you get on the private side. And if it can, then you continue to do what you're doing. If it can't, then again, you come back and make another decision in terms of making sure that the best bang and the savings is given to the taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Rickard.
I agree that a period of evaluation is necessary so that you can make wise decisions. Yes, we do need to take a business-like approach, but we also need to recognize the unique role of government and the responsibilities of being able to provide service, regardless of weather, regardless of conditions. In fact, that's when we care for, need our government the most. When the chips are down, the storms of life come through. So we need to recognize that, but we do need to take advantage of efficiency. So a period of evaluation where you compare the cost as well as the availability of the service, whether it be vehicle maintenance, solid waste disposal, or public works that sometimes has to go out in the middle of the night to clear roads and be sure people can get to work, those kinds of things. So it's a period of evaluation.
Mr. Rickard.
Number one, first and foremost, you can use the position of mayor and the bully pulpit of mayor to support public education and convince the community that we need, whether your children are in private school or not, we as a community need a strong, viable public education system. So we need to support that, we need to talk about that, and we need to continue to advocate for strong public education. Secondly, I think there are numerous opportunities that we could work, whether it be to police areas around the schools, whether it be to work with the school system so that libraries and gymnasiums can be used by the school during the day and become resource centers and recreation centers in the afternoon for after-school programs that recreation could participate in. There are all kinds of ways that we can collaborate with education to solve some of the problems.
Mr. Hart.
I agree that we ought to be strong supporters of education. You know, you can't be pro-economic development if you're not pro-education, because all those things are tied in together. So I see it very important to make sure that you look for ways to form new partnerships with the education community, to make sure again that we're looking at what we can do, first of all, to keep kids in school, but two, for those who have fallen out of school and dropped out of school, to see what we can do to get them back into productive situations as quickly as we can. So I think we have to just look for new ways to partner with them. And one of the things that I've always pushed is that economic development is so important that we got to make sure there is a person on our team from the education, the superintendent. And on the other hand, we got to make sure somebody from government is on the education side, so we can make sure we work together.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Ellis.
Well, education obviously is one of the most important issues of our time in our community, and indeed our nation. So I met with the superintendent of schools, Dr. Smith, just this week, and we discussed some of these issues. I pointed out to him some of the things that when I was in office, we did in fact partner with the Board of Education. We built the gym at L.H. Williams High School, at L.H. Williams Elementary School, to do exactly what the mayor mentioned, that gym during the day is used by the school system, in the evening is used by the community at large. We need to do more of that throughout this community, in ballparks and ball fields and things of that nature where we're partnering with the school system. That's recreation. But the after-school programs where children will continue to be mentored, continue those who are falling behind, will you be in our recreation centers, that we'll have certified teachers there to mentor them, to help them with their deficiencies, and when they get back in the classroom, they can excel. So there's a lot of ways that we can
Thank you, Mr.
support,
Ellis.
and we will support, and we've demonstrated.
Mr. Casino.
Yes, as I said before, be active in the board, appoint somebody, if I can't make it to the board, to have reports that's coming on with it, work personally with them, get after-school programs, not only for the children, but for the adults. There's many adults out here that don't even have a high school education. What are we doing for the adults out here? We need to have programs other than having a paid program, which they cannot afford to pay to get the higher education or even get their GEDs. We failed as a community to give them their high school education. Now we've got to pick them back up and get them their education somehow, some way, and that means after-school programs, getting them involved in the school to go with little Johnny to school or little Susie or whatever, and sit with them in their class. And from that point on, they're going to want to learn.
Thank you, Mr. Casino. Mr. Bishop.
The Board of Education has its autonomy. It sets its own tax rate. Excuse me, the board members, I think one thing we need to do is get behind the board members and support them, and also support the teachers to restore discipline in classrooms. A child can't learn in a disruptive situation, and I think that we need to get them to restore discipline in the classroom and support the teachers. I don't think we can have much impact on the educational system itself because of the way it's set up and the autonomy. And those people are responsible to the taxpayers, and so we need to make sure we elect the right people to the Board of Education, number one. But in regard to having a personal economic development, we had the superintendent of the Board of Education on our team for economic development during
Thank
the
you,
time I
Mr.
served as on the MEDC.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you. As most of you know, we do have a representative on the Water Authority from the city as well as one from the county, an elected representative. The school board has only 8 board members that are elected through the county-wide system. I would like to ask that the General Assembly appoint and put a 9th person on that board, either be the mayor and/or a county commissioner to sit on that board. You're right, there's only 2 taxing authorities in Bibb County. It's time the right hand knows what the left hand's doing, and that's what I would ask. That's a good question. You know, one thing, we have been doing tax incentives for all these big businesses and having the chamber and MEDC and other groups going out and trying to bring people in here, and we tell them we're going to give them 15-year tax payments and such. We've got to do the same thing with local downtown or businesses downtown to keep our people employed. I mean, if your downtown area goes to pot, so does the rest of the community. So we've got to work with the people themselves and our local community that's already here.
Mr. Bishop.
Will you ask that question again, because sometimes the answers confuse me.
The answer is, what would you do to encourage new business development or to encourage other businesses to relocate?
Well,
to
I
Bibb County?
think that we pretty much answered that question before. We need to put the economic development team back in place that we had in place before. The prospects are usually brought in by the ombudsman, which was Pat Toppin. They come there. Then we work on our own time to sell the city and the county to the prospects. That way they locate here. We've got to clean up the crime problem again, though. We've got to clean up the city of Macon. We've let it go too long. We've let it get in bad shape by political interference with the operation of law enforcement inside the city. You saw the chief resign or retire, and he said one of the things that he retired for was because of political interference with him doing his job. So we've got to clean up crime. We've got to put our economic development team back in place, and then we can make ourselves attractive to other companies. One of the first things I would do is get Kumo Tire to come on in and open up shop here in Bibb County. I'd work on that. That would be one of my first prospects, is to get Kumo to come on sole local manufacturing plant here in Bibb County.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Ms. Kusina.
My first thing would be is to get the one-stop shop to where the businesses come in and get their licenses and fees and everything. all at one place to get all their licensing done. The next thing I would do is to start working closely, one-on-one with our Visitors Bureau to make sure that they highlight the best interests of our city, the Chamber of Commerce, work with our Better Business Bureau, work with every entity that's out here to work hard to publish our city. We are a world-known city already, but because of the bad talking that we have of our own selves, we've got to enlighten ourselves again. We've got to talk good about this community. And if you see something wrong in the community, encourage somebody to clean it up, close it up, or shut it up. One or the other.
Thank you, Mr.
Got to do
Casino.
it.
Mr. Ellis.
Well, I'm on record supporting casinos for our community. I support casinos for several reasons. Number one, if you look at
Say casinos or casinos?
Give him an extra minute on that.
Well, I take my 10 seconds back.
You can have it back.
During this pause. But I'm on record of supporting casinos. If you look at Biloxi, Mississippi, if you look at Tunica, Mississippi, if you look at Cherokee, North Carolina, you look at other places where we have casinos, there have been a great uplift in terms of job creation and things of that nature. So I'm on record on, but beyond that, small businesses, that's the backbone of our economy. We have to do everything in our power to strengthen them, to support them, to expand them. It's very, I sat at the table. Charlie said put the team back together. I was on that team. Yes, we should put that team back together. As a mayor of the city of Macon, when we brought Bass Pro Shop here, when Coles came, and when some other things happened. But by the same token, we didn't give the same attention to small businesses, the mom and pop shops who are hiring 5, 10, 15 people. We must incentivize them as well. Make sure that they have the same support that the big box, the large corporations have. So I'm committed to small businesses, supporting them, expanding them, and make sure that they have the same incentives, be it tax breaks or what have you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. I gave you your 10 seconds, that's 5 seconds on top of that. Mr. Hartman.
I'll try to get our arms around education and crime. In addition to that, I'll continue to provide incentives that would bring new businesses to our area. I would also try to get incubators. I think it's important that for some of the young, small businesses that are trying to grow, that they need assistance. And we got Mercer University, we got Westland, and got other kinds of support opportunities in our community that we're not really taking advantage of. So I'll try to make sure again that we use those things to help grow our community from the small business side. But I will continue to look and make sure again that government provide monies in its budget to look for industry so they can provide the appropriate incentives as we did with Tractor Supply to land them and get them here.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Rickard. I
have a vision and a plan to make Macon the hub city of the Middle Georgia region. What you say is the hub city of the Middle Georgia region. It's a community with a vibrant urban core that offers opportunities, be they social, cultural, retail, healthcare, higher education, opportunities that you don't find to the same extent elsewhere in the region. And secondly, the transit and transportation to allow people to get in and access those opportunities and get back out. By creating a vibrant urban core with these unique opportunities, you attract businesses and industry, retail, residents. So that's what we need to focus. That's why I'm so excited about the 2nd Street corridor and the excitement that is beginning to build around this green, complete street that will extend from I-16 to I-75.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. Thank you, Mr. Rickard. Thank you, Mr. Rickard.